So we were in our last class factoring the greatest common factor stuff that we just went over on the Kahoots and on the board here. So, again, this is kind of a typical problem here, right? So look at the numbers, that 3 goes into all of those. So we put a 3 out front. Then you look at the x's and we take the smallest exponent, which would be x to the first. So that goes out front. And then we see, well, okay, I have 3x out front. I'm going to need to multiply that by x to the 11th to get 3x to the 12th for that first term. And we do that for all the terms, right? 3x times 2x would be 6x squared. And 3x times 1, of course, is 3x. So GCF is one way of factoring. And in fact, you always want to look for a GCF when you're factoring them. It's the first thing you do. So if you guys scroll down here, we're going to factor these trinomials. Now a trinomial, tri means 3, of course. So they're going to have 3 terms. This is a little different in a sense that if I look at this first one, x squared plus 7x plus 6, there is no GCF. Okay, we'll get to some eventually where we do a GCF in these, but for right now, when we factor a trinomial, so if you have 3 terms, you want to set 2 sets of parentheses. And in that 2 sets of parentheses, the things that go in the first 2 spots have to multiply together to give x squared. So that would be x and x, because x times x is x squared. Now, on the outside of the second things inside each box, they have to multiply to get 6 and add to get 7. So what you might want to do is if I write down factors of 6, so like 1 and 6 or 3 and 2. So I wrote down factors of 6, and then I look at these and say, well, which ones can I get 7 from? Well, not 3 and 2, but from 1 and 6, right? I can get 7. And so I do 1 and 6 there. And I want my middle term to be positive 7. So it's going to be a plus 1 and a plus 6. And that is factored. It factors into x plus 1 times x plus 6. Now you can check that by foiling it out. And you don't have to do this every time, but if I FOIL this out, I should get back to the original. So I'm going to do that. If I FOIL it out, I get x times x is x squared. And the outside gives me plus 6x. And you guys are good at FOILing, so I'm doing this kind of quickly. So 1 times x would be plus another x, and 1 times 6 would be plus 6. So it is x squared. And 6x plus x is 7x plus 6. So it checks out. It factors. Correct. All right. Any questions on the first one? All right. Let's do the next one. So I see it's a trinomial. I'm immediately going to put my 2 sets of parentheses. I know that x and x are my first 2 terms because I have to get x squared from those. So that's a good start there. Next, I want factors of 10. So I'm going to write them down, and you guys, depending on how well you're doing with this, you can or don't have to write those down. But my choices are either 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. Remembering that I have to get 7 in the middle. So if I know I have to get 7, that means 2 and 5 are the winners, right? Because I can get 7 from 2 and 5. So I'm going to write plus 2 and plus 5. And if I were to FOIL that out, I'm not going to write them all down, but x times x would be x squared. On the outside, I get 5x, and on the inside, I get 2x, which is 7x, so that's good. And 2 times 5, of course, is 10 on the end. So it checks out. All right, part C. Same idea. I see it's a trinomial. I put my 2 sets of parentheses. I've got x and x. Now, factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So now remember, my middle term, I have to get 4x. Well, I can't get a 4 from 1 and 12, and I can't get a 4 from 3 and 4, but I can get 4 from 2 and 6. If it is positive 6 and negative 2, that would give me positive 4 in the middle. And notice when you FOIL it, I also would get negative 12 on the end, so it checks out. So this is a nice thing about doing it on the iPad. You might write something down, FOIL it out, and it doesn't check out, and just erase it and try a different set of numbers. You know, there is definitely some trial and error to what we're doing here. All right, let's take a look at E. So trinomial, I have 2 sets of parentheses. I have x and x. So now factors of 21, which are 1 and 21, or 3 and 7. So I want to get 4 in the middle, okay, negative 4 actually. And so 1 and 21 is not going to work, but 3 and 7 can give me negative 4 if it's plus 3 and minus 7. That would give me negative 4 in the middle. All right, how about if you guys take 30 seconds and do D real quick, please. All right, so we have our 2 sets of parentheses because it's a trinomial. So I put x and x. Now I want factors of 7. Well, 7's a prime, so that's kind of nice because I only have the possibility of 1 and 7. Now be careful. I want negative 8 in the middle. So that means I have to have negative 1x and negative 7x. And so that factors into x minus 1 times x minus 7. All right, any questions on that? Okay, so those are trinomials again. They have 3 terms. Below there are binomials, which have 2 terms. When they are binomials and have 2 terms, most times students find these to be the kind of the easier, quick ones. There's a little bit of a shortcut for this. If it has 2 terms, and again, that means binomial. Here's what we do. We do our 2 sets of parentheses. And we take the square root of the first one. So the square root of x squared is x. And that goes in the first 2 slots. And then we take the square root of the second one. Well, what's the square root of 9? 3, right? So I put 3's in the second slot. They're both 3's. And then one's a plus and one's a minus, so we're done. Okay, again, the square root of the first one goes in the first slot, the square root of the second one goes in the second slot. One's a plus, one's a minus. So they should be real quick. And it comes out nicely when these things are perfect squares. If they're not perfect squares, we don't factor them this way. But in part B, 144 is a perfect square because that's 12 squared. So if I see that it's a binomial, and I can see that it is a difference, meaning subtraction, of perfect squares, I put the square root of the first one in the first slots. I put the square root of the second one in the second slots, which is 12. One's plus, and one's a minus. So will you guys take 10 seconds to factor this, x squared minus 36? And I say 10 seconds, because if it takes you more than 10 seconds, you're probably doing it wrong. So we're graphing x squared minus 36. As you're finishing that up, I'll put my two sets of parentheses. My first two slots are x and x. The square root of 36 is 6. And one's a plus, one's a minus. Done. All right, any questions on the difference of squares?